Welcome to Breakfast at Beverley's, the podcast that takes you on a journey through the fascinating world of transport and logistics. Join your host, Beverley Bell CBE, an industry expert and former senior traffic commissioner, as she navigates the highways and byways of the industry. From sunrise to sunset, we're here to accompany you on the road, bringing you insights, advice, and thought-provoking conversations with notable guests in the field. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Good morning and welcome to Breakfast at Beverley's. Today I'm joined by John Wilson, Divisional Manager at Aspian, specialising in placing talent across transport, logistics and supply chain organisations throughout the UK and Europe. John brings nearly a decade of experience in recruitment within the sector and of course is CPC qualified, giving him an excellent understanding of both the people and the operational side of the industry. John, it's great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me, Beverley.
Pleasure as always. So, usual question, what do you have for breakfast?
I normally have yoghurt and granola most mornings.
Okay. Do you combine that with a run or a climb up a mountain every morning?
Well, I do both. I went for a run this morning, but you can't obviously climb a mountain every single day. So yeah, mountains just a couple of times a year.
Because you do climb mountains, don't you, in your spare time?
I do. I normally do one big climb a year around the Alps. I've done Nepal and the Himalayas as well. So yeah, I do climb mountains as well.
What's your motivation for that?
I like adventure. I like pushing the limits and a bit of risk. My wife totally disagrees with me and most of my family don't like me doing it, but I really enjoy it. When I'm up there, I normally regret it, but when I'm down, I want to do it again.
I understand that. Well, I've neither done a run or climbed a mountain. So welcome. So a little bit about yourself first, John. How did you get into the recruitment industry or sector?
Yeah, so after school and after university, I always wanted to go travelling. Probably combines with my adventurous side. I went travelling. I got to Australia, pretty expensive country. I needed a job straight away. I took a job without knowing what the job was. Ultimately, it turned out it was door-to-door sales.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, 100% commission job, tough, but I loved it. And then from that, I realised I'm quite a people person, I'm quite goal-orientated. It ticked a lot of traits to have. Long story short, when I come back to England, I got placed by a recruitment company into a short-term sales job. Once that ended, I went back to the same recruitment company to say, what's next? And they said, have you thought about recruitment? Short interview later, 11 years later, I work in the transport and logistics sector of recruitment and have done for, obviously, as mentioned, 11 years. Okay,
so when you're obviously from the Merseyside area.
Yep.
When you came back from your travelling, did you go back to that part of the world?
I originally lived in Rainhill, where I'm from originally with my mum and dad. My now wife's family's from Milton Keynes. I lived in Milton Keynes for a little while. And then ultimately my wife was doing a master's and PhD up in the north, so we moved back up to Liverpool.
And that's where you work now?
And that's where I work now, yeah.
And do you recruit for all over the UK and Europe, not just a particular geographical region?
Yeah, I originated by starting recruiting out for the Northwest, but yes, as a business now at Aspian, we recruit for mostly the entirety of the UK. We do some into Ireland, and we get the occasional role into Europe, but yeah, mainly UK.
And when you started recruiting for transport and logistics, tell us what you knew about it.
Nothing at all. I knew I didn't even know the term HGV driver, to be honest. I knew a driver goes from A to B and deliver stuff, and that's as far as the extent of my knowledge went back in 2015 when I started.
So how did you learn? How did you learn about the sector, and how did you learn about the challenges that the sector continues to face? Because a lot of those challenges are the same now as they were then.
Yeah, ironically, 11 years ago, there was a HGV shortage. There was a HGV mechanic shortage, which them same narratives of conversation haven't really changed in 11 years. I learnt about the sector originally, obviously through my manager and getting basic understanding. I was told to read magazines. I'd always done that as research anyway for any interview, so I started reading the logistics. It was FTA, RHA, Motor Transport at the time.
Commercial Motor.
I started reading them, but I gained a lot of my knowledge from speaking to people working in the industry, interviewing transport managers, transport planners daily, and very gradually I was really intrigued about the job, about the industry, and I loved learning about different ways different companies do it, and that's where I got my lot of knowledge from originally, by just speaking to candidates.
And not just the transport manager job, but the different sectors, because the transport industry is so diverse.
Oh, 100%.
So have you built up your knowledge of the different sectors?
And that's what's one of the elements I really enjoy about the job, is dealing with multiple sectors. I deal with fuel companies, I deal with companies that deliver milk, companies that deliver food, palletise, general haulage, and I really got an understanding of all them different sectors from speaking to different candidates. And that's what I love about my job, is one day I'm dealing with something in the fuel, which is, at the moment you're on a fuel crisis, quite interesting. And then the next day I'm dealing with a company that's delivering, livestock, for example.
Okay, So can I ask you a question about some stats? In terms of transport manager jobs, how many applicants will you get for one transport manager job?
Depending on the geography, typically I could get 60, 70 applicants plus.
Really?
However, out of 60, 70 applicants plus, I will probably maybe get 4 or 5 on average relevant.
Okay.
But that aside, we actually only place 8% of our candidates through job adverts. The rest of the other 92% is placed via headhunting, reaching out, and sourcing other methods. Yeah.
So we'll talk about that in a moment, because there seems, certainly to people like myself, to be a real shortage of transport managers, full stop. We'll come on to what makes a good transport manager later. Do you agree that there's a shortage of transport managers, or do you think there's plenty of them? It's finding the right ones for the right jobs?
Yeah, well, I don't know the stats around people who have qualified with the CPC and able to do a transport manager, but I see lots of people with CPC qualifications. I see lots of applicants of transport managers. I suppose there's a shortage of what the client wants in terms of the specifics. If someone generally wants a transport manager that's dealt with ADR, it's someone having that specific skill set or the right fit for that business. In general, I think there's enough transport managers out there.
Right, okay, interesting. What is it about the job that you do that you really enjoy?
The people side, dealing with clients, dealing with transport managers, transport planners. I say getting to know their job.
What about the employers?
A lot of understanding the business, as mentioned, like really interesting business, and it's the, everything in this room has gone through a logistics process, from the wood, the table, the clothes you're wearing, even the waste leaving the room. And I suppose it's seeing that full end-to-end supply chain and dealing with the key intricate parts of that supply chain for a specific company, and going out to site, meeting them in person and seeing the operation firsthand.
What's the average age of the transport managers that you recruit?
I'd say 50 plus.
Do you see that coming down anytime soon?
I suppose it's going to have to. Ultimately, I think with the transport, maybe it's 50 plus because it's people's opportunities behind that level, from a transport planner, coordinator, supervisor upwards. Progression is an instant, isn't it? Sort of the development isn't there kind of around the corner. You generally see people work for around sort of 10, 15, 20 years to get that opportunity to be a transport manager. So maybe in that respect it wouldn't. If someone starts in the 20s, they're probably going to be at least in the 40s until they maybe have the opportunity to be. Obviously not a blanket statement for everyone. There is anomalies within that.
Okay. So when you look at a CV, well, first of all, do you still look at CVs, or do you have it all done by this wonderful AI stuff?
We still look at CVs. AI, there is a place for AI, and we do utilise AI, but quite often when we recruit someone, it's largely, yes, skill set, but culture fit as well. So we understand the client's needs from a culture fit perspective, so we have to have a physical conversation with the person. Ultimately, the CV is a method to get you in the front door, and quite often you would interview someone and within 10 minutes of meeting them, even though they look fantastic on paper, they might not be the right fit, and same vice versa. So yes, we look at CVs. We would need a CV as a reference point to fact check their background and career, but we need a conversation with people.
When you look at a CV, how do you weed them out?
If someone has had multiple jobs in a short period of time, it's normally a bit of a red flag. There's a high sort of turnover of jobs there. That would be probably the first method that we would look at, and then it's probably depth and detail. If you, as mentioned before, if you're getting 80 applicants, times how many multiple jobs we've got, there's a lot of time sifting through CVs.
Do you get speculative applications from people?
We get people ring up, so people slip the net. People don't come, and there was an example of someone just last week who had applied for a job, I'd noticed a CV or it's not been on my radar for whatever reason. That person messaged me on LinkedIn and rang into me and was really engaging, had a really good conversation with the person. Ultimately got a CV, and long story short, he's got an interview next week. So it's an underrated trait sometimes.
And you're saying that wouldn't have happened if you just relied on AI?
Yeah, no, it wouldn't have happened at all. I probably would. Well, I did already reject the CV or miss the CV.
Okay. So when you're looking for the ideal transport manager, what would you put up there as the top couple of skills and competencies that are needed for that role, regardless of the sector?
Well, firstly, it's compliance. Obviously, as a transport manager, you're going to be on an operator's licence, as we know. So it's that skill set of previous experience of managing the compliance, and not just understanding the rules and regulations, but actually have managed them and implemented them when needed for the business. And I think secondly is the personable side. As a transport manager, it's a key job. You've got to manage downwards in terms of your drivers and engage to short of the drivers. You need to do absolutely everything you can to engage with them and retain
Get them on side.
as well as your office staff as well, and manage them to do the same. But important as a transport manager, which I'm sure many TMs will know, is managing upwards. The person above you, the owner of the business, might not know the first thing about transport or might not be interested.
Or they might know all about it, but they don't actually want the transport manager to do what they're paid to do.
Exactly. And that person's on the operator's licence, it's their good repute at risk. It's managing back up the stakeholders higher up as well as lower down. So the personable trait is key.
And have you got a CPC?
I have. I did mine in 2017, I think.
Were you terrified when you took the exam?
Oh, yeah, it was horrendous. I still say to this day, even after being to university and everything, it's probably the hardest exam I've ever done. I passed first time, thankfully, but thank God I don't have to go through that again.
So you've certainly got empathy with people that have just got their qualification.
Yeah, 100%.
When you're interviewing people, do you interview them on your own, or do you have somebody else there? Do you do it on?
I generally interview them on my own. Yeah, we work on high volume jobs. We have people within the team that do specific ones, but I generally personally interview them all on my own. But obviously, ultimately, they go on to a client, which part of their recruitment process would be multiple interviews.
And if you interview them and think they're not great for this client, but they might be great for another one, would you then refer them on?
Yeah, so that is probably one of the key attributes to why I've been quite successful in this, and it's probably a lesson I learned early on. I think from the outside looking in, you think recruitment is, we just advertise jobs, someone applies, they're not right for the job, and you never speak to them again. It's that longevity and that long-term relationship. I speak to be honest, the vast majority of candidates I speak to, I don't speak to regarding a specific role. I speak to them because they're a good candidate, they're a good transport manager, they're a good transport planner. I get to know them and I understand what they're looking for. And then when a job becomes available that ticks that box, I can even put them forward. But quite a lot of reality, I know my clients just as well. And I might pick up the phone and go, I've got someone who's a really good culture fit or a really good asset who could be for your business. So the majority of recruitment isn't just working live roles, it is actually understanding your candidate and what they want and taking them out to the right people.
And what about salary? So do you advise clients on what you think the salary level should be? And do they take any notice? Or do they say it's this salary and it's not negotiable?
It's a bit of both. We generally advise what we will do within 72 hours of taking on a role. We market map the role. So with doing it 11 years, you generally have a good fix on whether the salary's way off or not. But irrelevant, we go for first 72 hours, go and look at the market and go and look what's available. And if they want X, Y, Z on X salary, we'll say X number of people physically exist with what you're looking for. But if you increase the salary by 5k, for example, you may get your candidate pool is X.
It's
larger.
like looking at a house, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you look at the top of the market and then you go, oh, well, I'll just go that extra 5,000 and then I can have the mansion. The reality is you don't.
And look, specifically, some clients have a more rigid process. Some say the salary is exactly this. There's no room for negotiation. If that salary is not right, they're the ones who tend to be recruiting for that role 4 or 5 months later as well.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So, because obviously you've got to manage the companies that are recruiting. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. What are the challenges for you and your business in recruiting and placing transport managers?
It's that sometimes a client wants all bells and whistles. They want X, Y, and Z, and they're paying 10k below the market value, for example, or that skill set physically doesn't exist. And then you will ultimately end up looking for a needle in a haystack, and you're looking for that sort of particular person.
And then again, sort of stats really in terms of recruitment. If I go to a estate agent and say, "Oh, I'll sell your house in 6 weeks, Beverley," of course I will, no problem. What do you say to your clients about how long it will take you to recruit and have appointed a new transport manager?
Well, the key thing is, and a lot of businesses often sort of fail in this, is not being quick enough in their terms of the process. So if you are them companies that are 2 or 3 months later still looking for that person, there's something going wrong in that process. We often see clients doing 2-3 stage interview processes, or a week or two to review CVs, then a week or two to review offer. You're talking 2 months potentially there in a candidate driven market where candidates have got options. A candidate, if they're actively looking for a job, could have 2 or 3 interviews in 1 week. You see people lose that.
Is it a candidate's market?
Yes. Yeah. There is currently, from our stats this year, typically if I put a candidate who's actively looking, they've probably got 2 or 3 interviews, and we've lost out on placements, or not, the clients have lost out on a candidate because they've been too slow in their process.
The perception from where I sit is, and I'll talk to you about periods of grace in a moment and the traffic commissioners, is from where I sit, it looks very hard to recruit a transport manager, B, even harder to recruit a really good transport manager that's the right fit for that particular job. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it can be, but what I would say to them businesses are, you engaging with 100% of the market? Are you putting an advert up and going, we haven't got the right applicants?
No. I'll just stick an advert on Indeed, Beverley. That's all I need to do.
Yeah.
Good advice?
No.
I don't advise them to do that, but...
No, because if you do that, you're getting a short list of the best people who have happened to see your advert, which is often a short list of the people who are only actively looking. What about if that right transport manager for your business is currently not active on the job board, but is engaged with someone like me, who says, if XYZ becomes available, John, I would 100% be interested in that opportunity.
So how much or how many of your candidates as a percentage do you recruit from Indeed, and how many do you recruit through your means?
So we place 8% of our candidates through job adverts. 92% is through other methods. We've actually took the decision recently to use job boards less, so we pay less money to them. I get less credit, so all of our jobs aren't even advertised. A lot of it is, the engagement with people and the proactiveness around that.
How do you build networks? How do you build relationships with employers? You can't just knock on the door. You can't just ring a well-known household name and go, "Hi, my name's John. Can I help you with your recruitment?"
We often do that sometimes. Do you? Yeah. Going back to my door-to-door sales, fundamentally a recruitment job is a sales job.
This is.
So the fair sort of criteria is having them relationships with clients to be able to put candidates in.
So's being a lawyer, actually.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's a sales job. Mm-hmm. And when we were talking before this, I said I used to have a job knocking on doors when I was a student, which was, "Hello, my name's Beverley and I'm from the Leisure Circle. Do you like reading and listening to music," or whatever the spiel was. And you're selling yourself and you're selling the product. Mm-hmm. But it's a tough thing to do.
It's tough. What's helped is, obviously I'm CPC qualified, I understand the industry. 11 years of doing the job, I've built up a network, I've built up a bit of a reputation, good, hopefully, but people will generally know, but byway, that's an introduction regardless. But irrelevant of all of that, if I had a transport manager who was specialised in ADR and fuels for the last 10 years and had real sort of good key savings he's made for the business, or etc., and I rang a business and said, "You're an ADR business, I've got a candidate that's done XYZ, and you can see how that'll be beneficial to business," would everyone say no? You will get no's, but most clients who could see the benefit of engaging with a talent like that they might not be able to access otherwise.
Okay. What keeps people in roles long term? Salary?
Surprisingly not. Obviously salary is important to everyone, especially in a cost of living crisis. It is important, but Harvard University recently did a study where salary didn't come into the top 5 traits of what people's motivations for looking for new jobs. Often it's progression and development and people being challenged and engaged. All the benefits around salary is often important, but I would say the number 1 and 2 is really progression, development and being challenged in that job. That's probably what keeps people there, as well as a good culture. There's plenty of candidates I speak to who leave jobs because of a toxic culture, because of a culture that is trying to push them to be non-compliant, and they're on the operator's license. They're putting profit above compliance.
As you know, we do deliver two-day TMCPC refresher courses, and as somebody once said, there are TM refresher courses and they're Beverley Bell refresher courses, and they're not the same. And I think he meant it as a compliment. But one of the things we look at are the skills and competencies of a transport manager. But as importantly, maybe more importantly, we look at the reasons for non-compliance. Not the symptoms, but the reasons. And one of we usually get to about 28 when we're doing this. One of the main reasons is culture. What's the culture of the organisation? Is it wing and a prayer? Hope it'll be okay. Is it'll be fine? I know the wheel's hanging off, but it's only a short journey. Or is it, we're going to do it right and do it right first time?
Yeah.
And that culture is really important. So what do you do when you get a call from, rogue operator number 1 and says, "Okay, John, I want you to find me somebody," and you know that you're throwing them into the lion's den?
Well, I suppose when knowing transport helps, we'd have a quite detailed job take-on process with the clients, because there's plenty of clients we turn away. Surprisingly not, we won't work with people with really bad reputations, but one of the points I go through is what's their OCRS score at the moment.
Interesting.
So, and don't get me wrong, there's people that say they're in red, for example, but then the follow-up question into that is why is it red? Yeah. So there's a client we dealt with.
They'll say it's because of the previous transport manager.
Yeah, possibly.
It might be.
Yeah, but there's a client we actually dealt with who had a red, but they had a public road outside of their site, and so they had no responsibility for the public road, but had full of potholes, and their vehicles were leaving the site, going down this road, getting faults or something with the tyres. Someone was sat at the end of the road.
Oh, nice.
Kept pulling them up, and that ultimately were in red. So it helps when explained to a candidate. So if they're in red, it doesn't mean we don't deal with them, but it's really understanding the reasons why they're in red. And a lot around that it's quite an incestuous industry, transport. You get to know companies by reputation. Yeah,
isn't it? It's very small in terms of, and everybody knows everybody else, especially in the sectors. So how did you get to know about the sectors? Because that's a big thing, whether it's as a consultant, whether it's as a traffic commissioner, whether it's a DVSA examiner, knowing the challenges of those sectors. If you've done powder tankers, it's entirely different from, hauling coals to Newcastle.
100%. It's probably from experience as well of dealing with multiple clients in multiple sectors. I think one of the early mistakes probably made in recruitment, I thought someone's looking for a transport manager or a transport planner, etc. Great, I can put any transport manager and transport planner forward. And in reality, it's far from the truth. And going back to an earlier question, you said, do people struggle to hire transport managers? It is sector specific sometimes, because a transport manager who has done general haulage for 20 years might find it completely different doing a transport manager for a ro-ro operator, skips, the waste industry, and that's where you often see people fail. So I've got to know the sectors by really understanding the clients, going to client sites and understand the operation, understand the specific reasons why they may need someone from a waste sector background. Then it's also pushing back on the clients is, okay, if we can't find someone who's done that, what is a transferable industry that they may work in that may work within that? Bulk tippers, for example.
Okay. So you see the sector from a very different perspective from how I do and how many of our listeners do. And they'll say, well, that's all very well, John, saying that, but I really don't want to pay the fees for recruitment consultant because they're expensive. I'll just see what turns up on Indeed. What would you say to those?
2 elements. Firstly, the fee is not payable until you hire someone in the business. So for us to market map the role, to present candidates to you, for you to interview them, there's no upfront cost. The cost only is entailed when you hire that person. So what I would say is still run your Indeed advert, still run your other recruitment methods and use us alongside that. So you're not just accessing this bit of the market, you're accessing the whole market. Then make your decision if you feel our candidate's better, and obviously a recruitment fee incurred. But secondly, actually on our website, you'll find there's a bad hire calculator. Which
is a what?
A bad hire calculator. So you can put in the retention rate, the average salaries you're paying, and tell you the cost of losing a member of staff that you've hired that is a bad hire. So some people think, right, it's cheaper putting it on Indeed, but let's say you've gone through that process and hired someone. You've gone through the training, you've gone through the recruitment cost of onboarding them, and obviously the interview process, plus your productivity taken away from your day job. What's that actually cost you to hire someone for you to lose them 3 or 4 months later?
So it's recruitment and then it's retention.
Yeah, it is. And we have a stat that 96% of the people we place remain in that job. We can measure up to probationary period. It's hard to measure it long term.
Of course.
But 96% of the people we place pass probation.
Okay. So I'm very old, John. I'm at official retirement age now, but I can do LinkedIn. I don't go anywhere near Facebook.
Okay.
I can do LinkedIn. I employ younger staff who are entirely familiar with it. You're a lot younger than me, but what about your young staff at your business? What do they use now?
A lot of social media. Again, I'm 36 and I'm still kind of in between, 1 foot in one and 1 foot that or the other. But we've recently started using TikTok, for example. So we have a division that I oversee that manages drivers, agency drivers essentially, and we launched TikTok in January and we've got 16 drivers working from that
From
method.
TikTok?
From TikTok alone.
And are they younger drivers?
Generally, yeah, there is some older drivers on there, believe it or not, but yeah, generally the younger drivers. We also use Facebook, so there's a lot of driving groups we're members of, and we post jobs within there, engage people through that way as well. So the younger people in the team engage through social media.
The lovely Facebook. Now, I'm told, I don't go near them, there are these forums on Facebook for transport managers. Good or bad?
I don't know. I think you take it or leave it. And there's a place for them. There's always good to have a forum and people we can engage with them, and that's how we've actually recruited people. Sometimes we've posted jobs within there, but often some of the forums, like any comments page, there's a lot of negativity, and unfortunately, if there's a lot of negativity around something, it might put people off. It's like if you go in a hotel and there was a forum about that hotel. And there was a load of negative, you'd read all the comment section, you probably never booked that hotel or go to that restaurant. So I think it's always important to make your own judgment firsthand on someone or a business. To give you a very quick example, there's a business we dealt with who had a very bad reputation for a number of years, and we really struggled to recruit people into this business because it's X business, I'm not interested, was generally the conversation. The reality is I've worked this business for quite a few years. There's been a change of ownership, change of culture. They've really changed that, but it's a really slow turnaround, and people will still write a lot of negative comments if there was a forum such as about this business and probably put people off. But in the reality of that business, it's totally different. They were actually won the I can't remember the award for the top employers.
Okay.
It's the Sunday Times. Okay. They were actually in that, so it's
a bit like fake news, isn't it? It's what's true and what's not true. Okay, that's really interesting. So, who would be a transport manager? It's a lonely job, isn't it? Being
it's a tough job. Manager. Yeah, it's not a 9-to-5 job by any means. It's 24/7. You know, you're responsible legally for that operation, so you can't shut the door at 5:00 and go home. In reality, it's never 5:00. It's 24/7 operation. So, yeah, I think you've probably seen a lot of transport managers come through. They fell into the industry, not chose to go into the industry, and that's probably a bigger, wider topic to discuss of why that is. But yeah, but in reality, people work 24/7. It's a tough job, but people love it. People are like me, never chose to go into the industry, kind of fell into the industry and love it, and I would never leave it. Many people like me didn't understand what transport did or was, you wouldn't choose it. But I think in reality, it's the third biggest contributor to the UK economy.
1 in 8 people work in transport.
Exactly.
Which is quite an interesting statistic, I think. So it can be lonely. We've talked about, and this is obviously this podcast is very much about you, but we're setting up a transport manager hub, which will be a safe place where transport managers can go to get advice, to network, to find out answers to questions, which is why it comes back to culture. So much is so important. Also, the supply chain is very much at the mercy of external events. And at the time of doing this podcast, we've got turmoil in the Middle East. We've got concerns about fuel supplies. Does that make your job any different, or is it just the same?
Yeah, it does, because you, in a market that's unstable, people, are less likely to invest, or decision-making processes go longer. I've seen in recent weeks jobs get put on hold because of an unstable market. They're unsure where things are. But on the flip side, that's kind of contradict myself. Logistics is an essential industry. We call it a recession-proof industry, because
people will always need transport.
It will always need it. So it will always need some capacity. You've seen that during COVID, where there may be particularly industries or parts of the industry that suffer during a crisis like that, but then other parts will excel. So fuel was probably used less during COVID. People were out driving less, but milk tankers went up. People are at home making more cups of tea.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So we talked before about the CPC, and we talked about how long it takes to recruit. So in your world, typically, from point of client phoning and saying, please can you find me, to actually them starting the role, what's that period of time?
On average, we have around about 14-day turnaround. That's what providing the clients on board with that and advice. So from taking on the role, we would get 72 hours of market map, and most likely at that point a shortlist is delivered, with an interview process taking place almost immediately afterwards, i.e. the week afterwards, potentially a second, and then to offer by 2 weeks. Obviously, it's dependent on the notice period.
That's my next question. What's the typical notice period for the transport managers that you deal with?
I would say a month.
Because when we're dealing with operators who need to find a new transport manager, and if they're on a period of grace from the Traffic Commission, it can be really challenging. Sometimes transport managers are on a month, sometimes they're on 2 months or 3 months, sometimes or on a week. 3, Sometimes they just walk out the door.
Yeah.
And don't even bother with that thing called a notice period, and that can leave our clients in a real mess. What due diligence do you do so that you know that the TM that you're recruiting, the one that you want to put forward to the client, is okay and hasn't been to a PI?
So obviously we do quite an in-depth interview process with all candidates.
People will tell you anything.
Well,
I've never been to a PI, John. You can trust me.
Well, that's the challenge. Similar, like I said before, with the clients, we ask them about the OCRS. If they're a TM, we ask them what their OCRS is. Whether it's green, or even we say, give me an example when it maybe had been amber or red, and tell me what you've done to get to that. Generally, by engaging with someone, you get to know the culture fit. But by going through some more in-depth questions, that's probably why it helps me being, I wouldn't say an expert in transport, knowing the market transport. I can ask more specific questions about their OCRS, for example, and challenge them on it.
And do you check if they've been to a public inquiry or preliminary hearing?
We reference check them. We generally will know the client, but it's probably something we could probably add into our process and do more.
If needed.
If needed, yeah.
Okay. So 2 final questions. What's the biggest red flag you've ever had when you've been recruiting?
From a business or a candidate?
Either.
It's probably that, from a business perspective, someone who's had a really high staff turnover. We've really struggled to recruit for this transport manager. We've been looking for 5 or 6 months. Fundamentally, going, why is the process taking so long? Or we're on our 4th transport manager in 2 years. It's not all bad luck. That it's something back within the business as a reason why they're not lasting. So I'd say that was probably the biggest red flag from a client perspective.
And from a candidate perspective?
Probably the same, but the opposite. I've had 4 transport manager jobs in 2 years. Yeah.
Okay, so you've been really interesting to talk to. I've asked you lots of questions. Obviously, you and I know each other because we've done work together. Are there any questions that you want to ask me?
Yeah, obviously it's largely based around recruitment, and you've had your business for quite some time now, and it's grown strength to strength.
Yeah,
but what problems?
9 years.
9 years, wow. And obviously you've scaled that up within that, but what challenges have you had with recruitment during that period?
I think it's the same for any employer, no matter what it is. Recruitment and retention is the biggest challenge for me as an employer, as a company. It's easy to sort out paying the taxman and the VAT every quarter, but finding talent attracting them to your business. Come and work for me, I'm wonderful. Well, you would say that, wouldn't you, Beverley? Yeah, but I am wonderful. You've got to sell yourself. And I think an interview is very much a two-stage process. It's not just about whether we in our business think this person's a great candidate. That candidate's got to say to us, I really want to come and work for you. We've just been interviewing for a new fee earner. And one of the questions is, what do you know about Beverley Bell Consulting? And one person said, nothing. Well, we'll have to be polite and finish the rest of the interview. Not even done a quick Google search.
Yeah.
So they're not going to be a great fit for us because they've obviously no interest in the business. And one of them said, well, actually, I didn't know anything at all about the business, and I certainly didn't know about transport, but I've had a look at it, and it's actually really quite interesting. They're immediately at the forefront because they're realising that transport is really fascinating.
Yep.
None of the people that work for the business have ever worked in transport before.
That's interesting.
Certainly didn't know what a traffic commissioner was, but they love it. And that's because I think it's a people job. It's all about the people in the organisation.
Yeah.
And so for me, the challenge is getting them to apply. I don't know. I don't think my age is against me because we are primarily a young, a young firm. But it's just getting those people in and then making sure that when you've interviewed them and they come and work for you, that they're as good as
they are. They
think they are.
Yeah.
Or you think they are. But it's about being a good employer as well, and that's really important. I agree with you. It's not just about money. It's about flexibility of working. We allow everybody to work from home 1 day a week. Most people take advantage of that. Some people prefer to be in the office every day. Being a family-friendly employer. When I was a working mother, you would never dream of taking your children to work. You would certainly not put them on social media. You were just a person working. It's a very different world now. And so I am understanding because I know what it's like when, the child's poorly. I'm actually going to pick up my grandson tonight because my daughter's having a wisdom tooth out.
It's them smaller things sometimes that go a long way.
Yeah.
That you would never really think of. Like the business I work for sends you birthday cards and yearly anniversary gifts and things, and that wouldn't be advertised on the tin on the outside.
Yeah, everybody in our business gets a little birthday thing, but anyway. So I'm going to bring it to a close. We could have talked for ages, as we always can, but I'd like to thank you very much indeed for taking part, and thank you very much, John.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Cheers.
As we conclude another fascinating journey through the world of transport and logistics, we want to express our sincere appreciation for listening. Your support means the world to us. Keep the conversation going by reaching out on social media with your questions and feedback. We're eager to hear from you and continue exploring together. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and check out our other episodes online. Take care on the roads and see you in the next episode.